So, the Esports World Cup is upon us. Pretty hype event. Some of the best teams in the world going at it in League of Legends today. And in Game 1 of BLG vs T1, we got a little bit of a surprise that I'm sure if you watch the game you will know about, but I just wanted to go over this draft because it was pretty insane and definitely very unexpected from the first game of the World Cup. And I think that it might be a little bit of a new meta shift in the top lane. So heading into the draft, BLG first pick the Zyra, which is pretty standard. Out of your top 3 AP junglers currently in the meta, you have Zyra, you have Karthus, you have Brand. So first picking one of those is always perfectly fine. I'm of the opinion that Corki is the strongest champ in the game currently, so he is my preferred blue side first pick. But when Corki and Tristana are both available, I think that getting your preferred jungler is perfectly fine on B1 because you can just do that trade of marksman in the mid lane. With that said, T1 do go ahead and take the Corki on first rotation, which is very standard. Pretty much teams just take whichever they think is stronger out of Corki and Tristana, which most people believe is Corki, and I would happen to agree with them. And then alongside the Corki, they also, it looks like they're taking Sejuani, which, as I stated in yesterday's video, I do not understand the high priority on this champion. Very, very overrated champ, especially when you pick Corki in the mid lane. You're not going to have any melee synergy to play around in that mid jungle. So that mid jungle combo is going to be pretty weak, especially compared to the Zyra Tristana, because Zyra is going to be outpacing and outfarming Sejuani for pretty much the entire game. And here we see the Tristana coming in on second rotation for BLG in the mid lane, and the Ezreal alongside it. So technically speaking, these two picks could be flexed between mid and bot, but most pro teams, if not every single one, is just playing Tristana in the mid lane and not the bot lane. I think she's viable in the mid lane and even, or bot lane rather, and even in the top lane if you really wanted to. But most likely here it's going to be the Tristana mid and the Ezreal in the bot lane. And then here's where the interesting thing comes in. T1 go ahead and pick Zeri on R3. And most people immediately would be like, oh, it's just an answer into the Ezreal. Strongest ADC available, whatever you want to say about that. It's going into the bot lane. But as we move further into this draft, as you're going to see, that Zeri pick is actually going to be flexed into another role, which is really, really crazy, and I did not expect it at all. So we'll get more into that as the draft plays out more. But through the first phase, I have to favor BLG. They have higher range, they're matching and scaling, and their jungle champion is just flat out better. Why? Like I said before, Zyra's just faster and more efficient than Sejuani. She's going to have faster clear the entire game, and she's also going to be just more useful champion. Sure, Sejuani offers some frontline, especially considering the Zeri flex pick that's going to come in a couple of picks here. But that being said, Sejuani, like I said, is just a really overrated champion in my opinion. She's not going to get the resources necessary to be a super tanky tank, and I definitely favor the Zyra pick over the Sejuani pick. I don't know why T1 is favoring the Sejuani over something like a Karthus or Brand. Maybe they are just that desperate for a frontline, which in that case is understandable. But with the jungle meta the way it is, I definitely prefer the fast farming AP junglers. Anyways, moving on, T1 R4 Leona, which is pretty standard. She's one of the most popular supports in the meta these days. I guess she offers strong engage and good CC chain. I'm not a huge fan because she's really easily counterable in draft by literally just Morgana Black Shield, or I think Rakan does well into her as well, but she has plenty of counter picks. Janna as well does very well into her. But no one picks enchanters these days for some reason, so Leona's probably going to go very unpunished. So that the interesting thing here, I want to pause real quick, is that BLG believe that it's Zeri Leona bot lane. And this is where the power of flex picks really comes in in the draft phase, and why flex picks give your team such a huge advantage in this phase of the game. It keeps the enemy team completely in the dark, and right now they're under the assumption, BLG, that it's going to be standard Zeri ADC. But as we see, T1 properly holds the flex until the last possible second and ends up moving the Zeri into the top lane. BLG round out with Nautilus and Jax, which is really weird. Nautilus Ezreal combo just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Also, your only frontline in this comp is the Nautilus support, who's not going to have any resources to make him tanky. He's going to be immediately cut through by the Zeri and the Corgi. Compare that to the Sejuani and Leona from T1's frontline, and they're in a much better spot to play front-to-back teamfight, which is really what BLG's comp wants to do, and what most teams want to do with the double marksman meta. So if you want to pick a tank, like I said in yesterday's video, highly recommend just putting it in the top lane so it has adequate resources to be an actual tank. The Jax as well as a blind pick is fine. It's not super punishable. I would have preferred, though, just any frontline tank, such as Malphite, Ornn, especially considering that T1 has already 2 ADCs picked, and they don't actually have any real AP threats. So a top lane tank would have been very good here for BLG, but alas, they go with the Jax blind pick, it looks like. They go with the K'Sante blind pick. So I guess it's kind of a pseudo tank, pseudo fighter. It's pretty simple to see that K'Sante isn't a dedicated tank champion, not like the Malphites or the Ornns or the Cho'Gaths are. I definitely prefer champions like that over K'Sante if you really want to pick a frontline. I know people like to meme on how strong K'Sante is as a champion, and sure, he has a pretty overloaded kit, but a lot of times in competitive, he just kind of doesn't really do much. So in that sense, I definitely prefer standard tanks as well. And here is where the Omegalodon draft gap flex comes in for T1, completely catching everyone in terms of, and as well as BLG completely off guard. They go ahead and pick Kai'Sa on R5 to not really counter anyone. I'm assuming they pick it because they see the top lane matchup. Maybe Zeus has had success with this matchup in scrims or something, and they go ahead and send Zeri to top lane into the K'Sante. And this is just absolutely insane. No one saw this coming. Triple ADC meta, I guess, is upon us. I think this is also a good call from T1 because Zeri and Leona together aren't really a great pairing, but Kai'Sa and Leona are a much better pairing together. Kai'Sa utilizes CC much better than Zeri does to get off her burst combo and be able to get plasma stacks more effectively. So the Kai'Sa Leona bot lane is going to be much more effective. I don't know how effective it's going to be into the Ezreal Nautilus lane. I doubt it's going to be much interaction in that bot lane. But anyways, the point stands that the flex pick came in here, sending Zeri to top lane, and it worked. It worked really well. The Zeri completely popped off. K'Sante was super useless this game. And even though it was a really competitive banger game, T1 did end up coming out on top. Honestly, these drafts are pretty comparable. I think both teams scale very well. Both teams have solid range. The only difference, in my opinion, being that T1 just has better frontline. Like I said before, K'Sante is not really an actual tank. People just delude themselves into thinking he is. And the Nautilus is not going to have adequate resources to be a tank. Compare that to Sejuani, who is a tank. That's her dedicated role. And Leona, who is, I'd say, much tankier than Nautilus because of her W. So with all that being said, I would give T1 the draft win simply because of their scaling, their range, their frontline. Their ability to front-to-back team fight is just much better and much more complete than BLG's here. And the use of flex picks to send the Zeri top lane was absolutely awesome to see. I really hope more teams start to utilize flex picks more, especially as we're seeing ADCs being moved to other roles in the current meta. So let me know what you guys thought about this draft in the comments section below, what you guys thought about the beginning series today in the Esports World Cup. It's a pretty cool, pretty hype event, and it's pretty cool to see kind of another international opportunity for these teams before Worlds later this year. Thanks for watching. See you next time.